There are statues of the national hero Sir William Wallace all over Scotland, including at Aberdeen, Stirling, Edinburgh and in the Scottish borders, a testament to the impact he had on the country. His life has become legendary, but it was his execution that led to his martyrdom. Little is known about Wallace's early life. He was born around 1270, son of a minor nobleman, but it's known that his fight for liberty began when he was a student at the school of Franciscan monastery in Dundee. There he found one of the students, Selby, son of an English governor, overbearing and tyrannical, and in the market gate cut him down. That strike of his sword was the beginning of his fight for Scottish independence. Following the killing, Wallace was a wanted man and forced into hiding. It was during this time he gathered round him other young Scots who believed in the Scottish cause. Wallace became a figurehead and fought against Edward I, known as Edward Longshanks in Scotland, and his armies, until he was captured at Rob Royston, and was delivered by Sir John Menteith, the Sheriff of Dumbarton, to English soldiers. He would go on to suffer an unimaginably painful death at the hands of the Plantagenet king. On the morning of Sunday 22nd August 1305, Sir William Wallace was brought to London for bearing arms against the English king. He was bound on horseback and set in the middle of a troop of the king's guards. Soon word spread among the people that this great malefactor was in town, and men and women gathered in Watling Street to see him, and rejoiced. They spat on him and shouted at him, as they'd heard that he'd ravaged and destroyed the treasures and relics held in churches that he'd attacked in the north of England. He was taken to the house of William de Lyre, which stood in the Ropery, Fenchurch Street, where he remained for a short time. When evening came, he was transferred to a cell in the Tower of London. The following day, Monday 23rd August, would be his last alive. He was again strapped to a horse, bound, and taken to Westminster to be tried. There he was met by Sir John de Seagrave, Sir Galfred de Seagrave, the Mayor of London, John le Blount, and sheriffs and aldermen of the Common Council of the city. Men, women, and children followed the convoy. They had been told that Wallace had not only pillaged their holy places, but had also, most unmanly, treated their womenkind in most brutal fashion. The convoy travelled through the Temple Bar, up the Strand, and finally reached Westminster. The manacled and shackled Wallace was then led into the Great Hall and placed on a stone seat at the south wall. It was here that words he'd said would come back to haunt him. He'd claimed that one day he would be crowned at Westminster Hall, despite Edward I. A group of soldiers pleated a wreath of laurel leaves and placed it on his head. They mocked him, asked him to free himself from his bonds, but Wallace sat there without uttering a word. He was then taken before his judges. These were John de Seagrave, Sir Peter Mulree, John of Bracknell, Ralph of Sandwich, and John le Blount. The king's writ was read out, declaring Wallace was a traitor to the king, that he'd committed sacrilege in the burning and despoiling of churches, and that he'd raised war against the king's majesty. He was also accused of killing the king's loyal subjects, fire-raising, depredations, and theft and other felonies, worthy only of death. He was also charged with assaulting and killing William de Hesselrig, the king's High Sheriff of Lanark, in May 1297, while discharging his loyal duties. Legend has it, Wallace killed him in revenge for the murder of his sweetheart, Marion Braidfoot, but this could be hearsay, as there is no written record of his motives. In response, Wallace replied that not being a subject of Edward's, he could not be accused of treason by him. He went on that if the other deeds had been done, they were out with the king's jurisdiction. The judges listened, although Wallace was denied the right to defend himself properly, but in reality it was a foregone conclusion. He was found guilty, with one of the judges passing the sentence. The punishment decreed that he be taken from Westminster to the Tower of London, then be taken to the Elms at Smithfield, there to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. As he was an outlaw and rebel, while still alive, the rope used for his hanging was to be cut down, then his head struck off with a sword. Due to being found guilty of the burning of churches and destroying the relics, as well as despoiling the treasuries, the heart, liver, lungs and innards of the said William Wallace should be cast into a fire and burned. The final part of the order was that his body be cut into quarters, the punishment for sedition and treason. His head was to be placed on London Bridge, a quarter suspended on a gibbet at Newcastle upon Tyne, another quarter sent to Berwick upon Tweed, the third to Stirling, where he'd been victorious at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in September 1297, and the fourth to St John's Town, Perth. The sentence was to be carried out immediately. Following the decree, Wallace was escorted from the hall. He was bound with thick rope that had been harnessed to 4 horses and dragged along the banks of the Thames to the Tower of London. All the way he was jeered by huge crowds. The horses were then led northwards, past the convent of the Poor Clares, past the Minories, and via Aldgate to the Elms, the appointed place of his execution. According to the records, all was done there as had been decreed and ordained by the judges, to the honour of our Lord the King, and to the effrayment of all rebellious and sacrilegious subjects. Wallace was 35 years old. A plaque was unveiled at St Bartholomew's Hospital near to the site of the execution in April 1956 to commemorate the events of that fateful Monday. The execution of Sir William Wallace did not have the effect on Scotland that Edward had wanted. At midsummer of June 1314, under the command of Robert Bruce, the Scots won a decisive victory at the Battle of Bannockburn that led to the country being recognised as an independent nation. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.